that person lying too?
I have not received any evidence outside of the screenshot that Miss Washington directed.
So those
her
two
team.
people are wrong. They're not telling the truth to us.
We are currently investigating this
But that's not
issue
what you
and
said.
bringing
You
in
said
the
this is
IG.
isolated, reprehensible, hasn't happened. This is the only time. And they're saying, nope, 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 it's commonplace.
Deanne Criswell, who is the administrator for FEMA, is on Capitol Hill today, who is giving a testimony in response to the bombshell scandal. We're talking about FEMA discriminating against people who support Trump during the Hurricane Milton disaster response. 2 whistleblowers have already come out, confirmed this. 1 has already been fired. They claim they've been framed, actually. So let's just say some answers are overdue, accountability is overdue, and Jim Jordan is there to make it happen. So let's see him rip into the administrator. Watch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Administrator Criswell, is Miss Washington lying to us?
Miss Washington has...
She said it's common practice. You said it's reprehensible and isolated. Both statements can't be true. So someone's not giving us the facts. And I'm kind of trying to figure out who's not telling the truth.
The actions that Miss Washington took were unacceptable.
Well, you had another employee. Now, they remain anonymous, but I think one of my colleagues pointed this out earlier. A FEMA official who spoke on condition of anonymity said Miss Washington likely received, quote, very clear guidance from her supervisors. Is that person lying too?
I have not received any evidence outside of the screenshot that Miss Washington directed.
So those
her
two people are wrong. They're not telling the truth to us.
We are currently investigating this
But that's
issue
not what you
and
said.
bringing
You
in
said
the
this is
IG.
isolated, reprehensible, hasn't happened. This is the only time. And they're saying, nope, 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 it's commonplace.
I am saying that FEMA's mission is to help all people.
Well, let's look at
before,
maybe
during,
the
and
best
after
evidence we
disaster.
have is the actual screenshot. Can you put the screenshot up on the screen? Let's look at what the text message said. The text message said, implement best practices. Like, this is the best practices. We're going to implement them. And they talk about making sure you're going in pairs or with more than one person, avoid the Trump homes, drink your water, take your towel, coconut waters. So stay hydrated, walk with someone else, and don't go to the Trump homes. It seems pretty common and matter of fact in the actual evidence we do have, the text message itself. But you're still saying Miss Washington and this other person aren't telling the truth.
When I received this text message, it was not in accordance with the way we conduct business at FEMA, and I directed
Even though it said
termination.
best practices, even though it said stay hydrated, which everyone would agree with, even though it said go in pairs, which everyone would agree with, even though it said bring a towel, make sure you're covered. I mean, even it said coconut water is the best way to stay, even though it said all those practical things, the part about avoiding the Trump homes, that's not a best practice, that's not commonplace. Is that what you're saying?
That is nowhere in our policy, and I can't speak to
I'm not saying it's in your
motivations
policy.
behind what Miss Washington did.
But it was, okay, now her supervisor, this Mr. Hershey, have you talked to him and to find out if he knew this was happening?
I understand that he was in her chain of command, and this is under investigation.
Have you talked to there's 13 people on this text message. Have you talked to all 13 of those individuals?
This incident is under investigation.
That's not what I asked you. I know it's under investigation. We know how investigations work when it's done inside the agency. It takes forever. I'm asking, did you talk to the 13 people on this best practices text message?
The Office of Professional Responsibility has taken this, and they are following appropriate protocol to investigate.
Is the Inspector General looking at it as well?
And I have asked the Inspector General to take a look at this.
Any idea when they're going to talk to these 13 people since you have it? Have you talked to, how about you personally? Have you talked to any of these 13 people?
I have not talked to them.
You have not talked to any
I
of them?
have an entire team that focuses on this investigation, and that's what they're doing.
Seems to me it's part of a mindset that's in government. And this is the scary part, because I think it's broader. And you don't have to take my word. Take it what people have said. I mean, this reminds me, we've talked about this many times, but I can think of, well, actually the same person, let's go back to that. The same person who said that this likely received very clear guidance, this other FEMA official, also said this: I've heard from other entities who are serving in North Carolina that there was clear guidance to be mindful, quote, of the types of people who are in Western North Carolina. That's pretty derogatory stuff there, isn't it?
I have not seen it.
But you know what it sounds like? It sounds like Peter Strzok. Peter Strzok, when he said, oh, I just went into Walmart, I can smell the Trump supporters. Sounds like Joe Biden when he said, oh, the garbage I see is the Trump supporters out there. Sounds like the guys the Democrats had The professor the Democrats had testify back in 2019 in the impeachment. Conservatives, especially very conservative people, tend to spread out, perhaps because they don't even want to be around themselves. This disdain, this mindset that's in the government where everyone's deplorable, everyone's garbage, everyone is, smelly people at Walmart, and be mindful of those people in Western North Carolina. That's what it sounds like. And again, the best evidence is the text message we have, which reinforces that mindset that we have seen from so many people in our government.
The actions directed by Ms. Washington are unacceptable. And when I received this text message, I directed her termination.
Do you have any idea who this other official is?
I do not, and if you have that information, Congressman, please share it.
I don't have it. You're the one who's got it. You're the one who hasn't talked to the 13 people on the text message.
It has not been raised to me.
All right. So, it's clear as day in the group chat. There's at least 13 people. And what is the second bullet point? Avoid homes advertising Trump. So obviously this isn't a new story. This, broke at least a month ago. However, it's just now that they're holding this hearing because they haven't only just had one, but two whistleblowers. And as I stated, the one that was fired is the Miss Washington that they are referring to. Okay. Number one, every answer that she's giving is it's under investigation. Now, who does that sound like? That sounds like Kimberly Cheeto, who was the former director for the Secret Service. We see what happened with her. So I think it's only a matter of time before this administrator gets replaced, clearly. Now, even if she wasn't aware of this, which is possible because you're talking about a government organization, thousands of employees, the person at the top is not a part of all of these pieces of communication or group chats, things of that nature. Ultimately, the buck stops with her. She has to be held responsible. And this is what's been lacking in Washington is no one's ever held accountable. No one's ever fired, right? And when you're discriminating against people who have Trump signs, I think there's an issue there. Now, this speaks to also the culture in Washington because here is AOC downplaying this issue of discriminating against Trump supporters.
But I wanted to move a little bit into your work and what we're seeing now in the current information environment, especially after a disaster. Administrator Criswell, recently in North Carolina and with these storms and hurricanes that have hit this year, there have been very large-scale moments of disinformation regarding FEMA, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
One of those that I've just seen is this idea that, and I'm going to ask you if this is true or not, and I apologize that I even have to ask you some of these things, but I think it's important for the American people to see in a setting like this, where we have to swear to tell the truth, that we see officially on the record that these things are not true. The first being that the suggestion that FEMA assistance was only a $750 loan that would have to be paid back, and if not, FEMA would seize the homes of everyday people who may not be able to make that back in such a catastrophic moment. Is that correct?
That is completely inaccurate.
Completely false, correct? But was it in your assessment, and did you see lots of people believing this on the ground or in the field?
I was on the ground for over 3 weeks in North Carolina, and I did hear from people on the ground asking me, is this real or is this not real?
Another one that I also saw very widely circulated, that FEMA did not have enough money to provide relief services because that allocation of funds went to either undocumented immigrants, aid to Ukraine, or even aid to the Israeli government. Is that correct, that FEMA's funds were allocated away to those causes?
Completely inaccurate.
Completely false. On the record, completely false, correct?
Correct.
And other things that we've seen as well, that it's standing policy for FEMA to politically discriminate. We know that that's not true, correct?
Correct.
And there was an incident we see, but that individual was fired and that this is not a policy at scale, correct?
Correct.
Now, we know that these are important pieces, very large and influential pieces of disinformation.
Okay, so we know what AOC is trying to do here, right? She's trying to claim that misinformation is truly the problem, not the fact that they were discriminating against Trump supporters. Okay, please tell me how you make that make sense, right? I wouldn't expect anything less, like I'm sure you wouldn't either. But here's the issue. We have the text message group chat. So clearly it was being done. That's number one. Two, we also have people on the ground, these homeowners, the people that live there, they're saying the same thing. So you can't say, oh, this is just an isolated event. And then three, to chalk it up to misinformation is doing the same old thing you guys have been doing for so long now, which is every time you guys are confronted and it's accountability time and the truth must be revealed, you guys end up doing what? Claiming misinformation. That's not going to work this time. Now, let's be honest here. Misinformation and conspiracy theories come about because there's a lack of transparency. And they did bring this up and they did question her on this. Check this out.
Today, when you spent some time and my colleagues talk about misinformation, first, misinformation is freedom of speech, whether it's true or not. But you know what fuels misinformation? The inequity that FEMA has engaged in. Because it allows for people to assume, whether true or not, a level of either incompetence, inefficiency, or lack of concern for those who are struggling the most when they see individuals enter this country illegally and then are transported here and receiving services. And you know that it is easier to access the shelter and services funding than it is to access disaster relief aid, housing assistance, small business aid. You know that it's more complicated. Doesn't that in and of itself fuel the misinformation?
Congressman, we are administering that program as directed by Congress.
You are not administering the program as directed by Congress. We establish the law, we establish the provisions, and we expect the person, whether it's the president or the administrator of FEMA, to decide what is and is not priority in response to emergency. And by that very measure, with all due respect, the agency has failed. And it has lost focus. My time is up. I yield back to the chairman.
Okay, so point number one, they have failed because when you had non-government, private individuals dropping supplies, finding people, search and rescue, we're talking about at the peak, they said it was 35 private helicopters. When that took place, I mean, that pretty much puts the nail in the coffin that FEMA has failed. I mean, FEMA is supposed to be the experts in disaster relief and response. So I don't know what else is there truly to debate on that issue. I mean, the results tell the story that FEMA failed in that regard. Then they failed in communicating as well. When there are rumors going around that all a person is going to receive is $750, and then at the same time they're hearing billions of dollars are being sent to Ukraine, what are these citizens supposed to think unless you guys step up and make it very clear and concise what the truth really is? So why don't you let me know in the comment section if you believe it is true that FEMA has failed and explain why that is. I truly believe, again, it's that the woke mind virus infected the agency. The agency is also politicized. So the people running it is not really thinking about what actually matters. What they're thinking about is the politics, the DEI stuff, the agenda. They are thinking about having great numbers on paper, but not in actual reality. They're making sure that they suck up to the current administration and not actually do the right thing for the Americans who were struggling. And again, we got to see that firsthand. But it's nice to see that they are finally holding a hearing on this and the administrator is being called out. So let me know what your thoughts are and more in the comment section below. Now, another thing that happened on Capitol Hill today was Congresswoman Nancy Mace really sending shockwaves when she introduced a bill to ban men from women restrooms. Now, obviously, that doesn't sound crazy to me, and I'm sure it doesn't sound crazy to you. Yeah, but when you have progressives who are serving in Congress, it is a crazy thing for them, including the left-wing media. So ABC tried to obviously confront Nancy Mace over this, and let's just say that reporter, she went scorched earth on him. If you guys want to check out that video, all you have to do is click on it because it's coming up right now.